Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It's Friday, October the 31st, 2025, and today's topic it's going to be about basic drawing, and it may be a deep dive. But to begin with, I wanted to talk about angles, lines, and proportion. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day, and I use a timer to stay focused and to build a habit. I'll start a 10-minute timer. And this video will be an intro to these basic drawing concepts. And I was thinking about what I use all the time, because just because it's basic doesn't mean that it's not important. I think that angles, lines, and proportions, they come up all the time, and once you practice it enough, then becomes sort of second nature. Sometimes it's good to kind of think about it, because if you skip them, usually that's what makes a drawing not look, since we're talking about basic drawing or drawing, that's usually what's not gonna look good. Now each thing kind of has its own. This will be the basic level, and then there's sort of an intermediate level. But yeah, let's start with I'll just kind of go over what I kind of know about it. So for example, angles. So angles, I thought about it because for the past several days I've been doing perspective, and a lot of it is just angles. And this will just be kind of an intro. But what I mean is, let's say you have these lines right here. So we call that parallel. But then let's say you have this line, and then you have, so you introduce an angle. And that comes up. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because you could have these parallel lines. Now you could be looking at a reference picture or from life or whatever. It's the same difference. You kind of, because you're going to be drawing it. So this helps. When you're looking at stuff, it helps to think, okay, are the lines like this? Now you might not be thinking about it, but that's kind of that's what you're doing as you're drawing it. So the lines could be more parallel. Now this also comes up because I do this cross-hatching thing a lot, like pen and ink. So those are parallel lines. But as soon as you introduce this, and then let's say that so a point is part of I've done videos where I talked about line. It includes points, shapes, and forms, but we're using line because we're drawing. I'm going to make this angle right here. So let's say that this is parallel, and then this kind of goes like this. It's sort of almost parallel. So you have this thing. Now as long as you keep, this has to do with proportion. So as long as you keep everything proportional, which is to say this distance right here, it's just proportional. But we'll get to the proportion. So that's the proportion. As long as you keep it proportional. Sometimes I'll say relative, but proportions, it works too. Then your perspective will be okay because you kept it proportional. That's the basics of it, and that's why it's kind of important. But it's also important for figure drawing and stuff like that, just basically drawing anything. All right, so the next thing, again, this is kind of an intro to it, kind of deep dive in all of this. So the next thing is lines, and so I've done a lot of videos about it, but you have points. So a lot of times if I don't want to have too many sketch lines and stuff, because I use a pen to draw most of the time, let's just use an example. So let's say that I'm just going to draw the eyes, and it can be kind of tricky to draw proportional eyes from or symmetrical eyes from the front. So just to do that, I'm going to do this. So that's like a point right there. And I'm going to decide, okay, like that's one of the eyes. And then there's that whole like rule of thumb where it's like about one eye distance, for example. So that's basically like what I'm thinking of right there. So you have the proportion, which is the distance. So that's pretty important, like to the drawing. And then if I don't want like a ton of, I might just imagine like the points, like that kind of thing. But the points are there. But then you have the lines. So there's curved lines and get some interesting characters. So yeah, there's more like angular lines like this. But notice that the proportion is what's controlling the distance. And that's how they kind of go together. And a shape, like the circle, is still a line. It's just that it's closed, and so it becomes a shape. So I think especially for symmetrical or symmetry, the points and the proportions. Now the point is just telling you, okay, like that's where it's a certain line, like it stops. So you got points, you got shapes, which is basically just a line that closes or has like the illusion of closing, because it could also be like a soft edge rather than like outlining. So you could outline it. Otherwise, it'll just kind of look like a square. And then forms comes from the shading, kind of like this, because it's not flat. There's going to be light. And that gives the illusion of form. Like, yeah, just when you show like where the light is. This kind of thing. Next we have proportions, which I kind of talked about already, because it comes up like a lot. In a way you can kind of, they all go together. So if you're the angles, which is to say kind of like this kind of thing, since this is parallel and then you have like these angles, like that's pretty important. But then all of this could look good, like you could draw good, make good lines, but then if the proportions are off, it'll be off. So if any of these things are kind of off, just like you could draw something really well, like a building, but like if the perspective is off, that'll be the thing that's off. So all of these things, they just come up a lot, like in the kind of the basic drawing. And I'll draw like a figure, because this is kind of not a figure, a landscape, just to kind of illustrate the point. I'm going to draw like just, so this will be from imagination, and this is also really helpful for that. So let's say that, like if I'm just going to draw something and just make up something. So notice that there's angles right here. Just like you could do this, like that has angles. So let's just do, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a good way. Like literally you could just draw a figure from that. So this already shows. Now then, let's say that this is the front view. By doing this, like that's the proportion, because I'm establishing the distance between this. Same with this, like that's the distance. And then when I connect it, you could use straight lines, you could use curved lines, like whatever. So what I'll do is I'll draw a figure, like right here, using these principles. If you want to hang around and check it out. Otherwise, I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine, and if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it, and until next time, keep on sketching.